The hostess at Spago Beverly Hills had seen a lot of things in her 15 years working the front desk. Celebrity tantrums, marriage proposals, even a few fistfights. But she'd never seen anything quite like what walked through the door on that Tuesday evening in October 2019. Madonna, dressed simply in jeans and a blazer, walked in with a man who looked like he'd been sleeping on the streets. Because he had been. His clothes were worn and dirty, his beard was unkempt, and he carried a small duffel bag that contained everything he owned in the world. The hostess seated them at one of the best tables in the restaurant, without question. Madonna had requested it specifically. But 20 minutes later, a wealthy couple in designer clothes approached the manager with a complaint that would change everything. "That homeless man," the woman said, her voice dripping with disgust, "is ruining our anniversary dinner. We want his table. He doesn't belong here." What happened in the next 10 minutes didn't just silence the entire restaurant. It created a moment that went viral around the world and reminded everyone watching exactly who Madonna really is when the cameras aren't rolling. 3 hours earlier, Madonna had been stuck in Los Angeles traffic on the Pacific Coast Highway when she noticed a man sitting on the sidewalk near the Santa Monica Pier. He was holding a cardboard sign that read, "Vietnam vet, hungry, God bless." Madonna had passed hundreds of homeless people in her life. She donated millions to charities, funded shelters, supported veteran organizations. But something about this particular man made her tell her driver to pull over. Something about the way he was sitting, not aggressive, not begging, just existing in a space the world had decided he didn't deserve to occupy. She rolled down her window and actually looked at him. Really looked at him. He had a Purple Heart medal pinned to his worn jacket. His hands were shaking, and his eyes had the faraway look of someone who'd seen things nobody should have to see. "Excuse me," Madonna said. The man looked up, surprised that someone was actually addressing him. "Yes, ma'am? That's a Purple Heart," Madonna said, pointing to the medal. "Where did you serve?" "Vietnam," he said quietly. 1968 to 1970. 101st Airborne. "What's your name?" James Wilson." Madonna got out of the car. Her security team immediately went on alert, but she waved them off. She walked over to James and extended her hand. "I'm Madonna," she said, "and I'm hungry. Would you have dinner with me tonight? Somewhere nice. You deserve somewhere nice." James Wilson stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. "Ma'am, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not exactly dressed for anywhere nice." "Neither am I," Madonna said, gesturing to her casual clothes, "and I don't care." James looked at this woman, this famous woman he recognized from MTV, back when he still had a home and a TV, and saw something in her face that he hadn't seen in years. She wasn't looking at him with pity. She wasn't looking through him like most people did. She was looking at him like he was a person who mattered. "Okay," he said quietly. "Yes, thank you." That's how James Wilson, a 67-year-old homeless veteran who'd been living under the 3rd Street Bridge for 7 years, ended up in the back of Madonna's car, heading to one of the most expensive restaurants in Beverly Hills. At Spago, the hostess recognized Madonna immediately and didn't bat an eye at her companion. She'd worked in Beverly Hills long enough to know that if Madonna wanted to bring someone, you seated them at the best table and you didn't ask questions. James sat down carefully, like he was afraid the chair might break under him. The table had a white tablecloth, real silverware, crystal glasses. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten at a table, let alone one like this. I don't know what half this stuff on the menu is, he admitted, his voice shaking slightly. That's okay, Madonna said warmly. Tell me what you like. Do you eat meat, fish, vegetables? I haven't had a real steak in about 10 years, James said. Then you're having the filet mignon, Madonna said decisively. And we're starting with the burrata, because it's amazing and you're going to love it. For the first 20 minutes, they just talked. Madonna asked James about his service, about his life before the streets, about what had led him to that sidewalk on the Pacific Coast Highway. James, unused to anyone caring about his story, found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years. He told her about coming home from Vietnam to a country that didn't want him, about the PTSD that made it impossible to hold down a job, about his wife leaving, taking their daughter, about the slow slide from apartment to motel to car to streets, about the 7 years of invisible existence, of being stepped over and around and through. Madonna listened to every word, her hand occasionally reaching across the table to touch his arm, to remind him that someone was seeing him, hearing him, caring. They were halfway through their appetizers when the couple at the next table started getting loud. The woman was in her 50s, dripping in diamonds, wearing a dress that probably cost more than James used to make in a year. Her husband was slightly older, in an expensive suit, the kind of man who was used to getting what he wanted. This is unacceptable, the woman said to her husband, not bothering to lower her voice. We're paying top dollar for this experience, and we have to sit next to that. She gestured toward James without even looking at him, like he was a piece of furniture that had been placed incorrectly. The husband glanced over at James, his nose wrinkling in distaste. I'll handle it. He stood up and walked to the front of the restaurant, where the manager was reviewing reservations. The conversation was quiet but intense. The manager's face went from professional smile to uncomfortable concern. After a few minutes, the manager, a well-dressed man in his 40s named Marcus, approached Madonna's table. He looked deeply uncomfortable, like he was being asked to do something he absolutely didn't want to do. Ms. Madonna, he said quietly, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your dinner. Could I speak with you privately for just a moment? Madonna looked at him, then at the couple who were watching this interaction with satisfied expressions, and immediately understood what was happening. No, she said calmly. Whatever you need to say, you can say it here. Marcus shifted his weight from foot to foot. There's been a complaint from another guest about your companion. They've requested that we move you to a different table. Or, he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Or what? Madonna asked, her voice still calm but with an edge that made Marcus visibly nervous. Or they've suggested that perhaps your guest might be more comfortable dining elsewhere. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching now, sensing drama. Madonna set down her fork very carefully. Let me make sure I understand. Those people, she gestured to the couple, who were now looking less confident, want my friend James moved because he doesn't meet their aesthetic standards for this restaurant? They used the term, they said he was just a homeless man who was making them uncomfortable, Marcus admitted, looking like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Madonna stood up. The entire restaurant went silent. She didn't walk over to the manager. She walked directly to the couple's table. James started to stand up too, but Madonna put a gentle hand on his shoulder. Stay, she said softly. You belong here. Madonna stood in front of the couple's table, and every single person in the restaurant was watching. Several people had their phones out now, recording. I couldn't help but overhear, Madonna said, her voice carrying through the silent restaurant. that you find my dinner companion offensive to your sensibilities." The woman lifted her chin defensively. "This is a fine dining establishment. There are standards. That man is clearly homeless and doesn't belong here. We're paying good money for this anniversary dinner, and we shouldn't have to—" "His name is James," Madonna interrupted. "James Wilson. And you're right, he is homeless. Do you know why?" The couple didn't respond. "Because he spent 2 years in the jungles of Vietnam getting shot at so that people like you could sit in expensive restaurants and complain about your anniversary dinners. He has a Purple Heart, which means he was wounded in combat defending this country. He came home with PTSD and a government that didn't give a damn about what happened to him after he'd served his purpose." Madonna's voice was getting louder now, fueled by a righteous anger that made everyone in the restaurant sit up and pay attention. He spent 7 years living under a bridge, 7 years being invisible to people like you who step over veterans on the sidewalk like they're trash. And when I invited him to dinner tonight, to a nice place because he deserves a nice place, he tried to say no because he was worried about people like you judging him. The woman's face was turning red. "We have a right to enjoy our dinner without—" "Without what?" Madonna cut her off. "Without being reminded that homeless people exist? Without having to acknowledge that the man sitting 15 feet away from you risked his life for your freedom? Let me tell you what you don't have a right to. You don't have a right to ask another human being to be removed from a restaurant because his suffering makes you uncomfortable." The husband tried to interject. "Now look here." "No, you look," Madonna said, pointing at them. "You're wearing what? About $50,000 worth of clothes and jewelry between you? You're drinking a bottle of wine that probably costs more than most people make in a month. And you think that gives you the right to decide who belongs and who doesn't?" She turned to address the entire restaurant now. "James Wilson is a better man than most people in this room will ever be. He fought for this country. He survived hell. And then he survived 7 years on the streets with more dignity than some people maintain in their mansions. So if anyone doesn't belong here, it's not him." Madonna turned back to the couple. "You wanted his table? James and I are moving to the private dining room, where we won't be disturbed by people who've forgotten what it means to be human." She walked back to James, who had tears streaming down his face. "Come on," she said gently, helping him up. "Let's finish our dinner somewhere these people can't ruin it." The manager, Marcus, had tears in his own eyes. "Ms. Madonna, the private dining room is yours, and your entire meal is on the house. I'm so sorry this happened." "It's not your fault," Madonna said, "but you might want to reconsider who you allow to make complaints in your restaurant." As Madonna and James walked toward the private dining room, something unexpected happened. One person started clapping, then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was applauding, not for Madonna the celebrity, but for Madonna the human being who just stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for himself. Everyone except the couple, who sat in mortified silence as every single person in the restaurant stared at them, with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. In the private dining room, James couldn't stop crying. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I knew I didn't belong there. I should never have come." "Stop," Madonna said firmly. "You belonged there more than anyone else in that room. Don't you ever apologize for existing, James. Don't you ever apologize for being visible." She sat with him while he collected himself, and then they finished their dinner. They talked for 3 more hours. Madonna learned that James had a daughter he hadn't seen in 20 years, that he'd been a high school history teacher before the PTSD made it impossible to work, that he still had dreams about Vietnam, but also dreams about maybe, someday, having a home again. Before the night was over, Madonna made some phone calls. She got James a room at a veterans transition facility. She connected him with a VA counselor who specialized in PTSD. She gave him her assistant's direct number and told him to call if he needed anything. "Why are you doing this?" James asked. "You don't even know me." "Because someone should have done it 7 years ago," Madonna said. "Because you deserve it, and because I can." The video of Madonna's speech in the restaurant went viral within hours. Multiple diners had recorded it on their phones, and by morning, it had been viewed millions of times. The couple was identified through social media, and the internet's judgment was swift and merciless. They issued a public apology 2 days later, though it was widely regarded as damage control rather than genuine remorse. But the real story wasn't about them. The real story was about what happened to James Wilson in the months that followed. With Madonna's support and connections, James got into a residential PTSD treatment program. He got sober. He started therapy. After 6 months, he moved into transitional housing. After a year, he had his own apartment. Madonna stayed in touch, checking in regularly, making sure he had what he needed. She helped him reconnect with his daughter, who hadn't known if her father was even alive. The reunion was tearful and complicated and beautiful. 2 years after that dinner at Spago, James Wilson got a job as a counselor at a veteran support center, helping other homeless veterans navigate the system that had failed him for so long. He uses his own story to show them that it's never too late, that they're not invisible, that they matter. Madonna attended his first day of work, surprising him with flowers and a card that read, "From one survivor to another, proud of you, M." The story of that October night became something bigger than just a viral video. It sparked conversations about how we treat veterans, about homelessness, about the casual cruelty of people who've never had to worry about where their next meal would come from. Spago implemented a new policy. They now partner with local veteran organizations to provide free meals to homeless veterans once a month. Other high-end restaurants followed suit. It became a movement, all because Madonna got angry in the right way at the right time. James Wilson still has that Purple Heart. He keeps it on his desk at the Veterans Center, next to a framed photo of him and Madonna from that first dinner. He shows it to the veterans he counsels, tells them about the night a stranger treated him like he mattered, and how it quite literally saved his life. People think the remarkable part of the story is that Madonna stood up for me, James says when he tells the story at speaking events. But that's not it. The remarkable part is that she saw me in the first place. She rolled down her window and looked at me like I was a person, not a problem. That's what changed everything. Not the money, not the connections, not even the viral video. The fact that someone saw me and decided I was worth seeing. Madonna rarely talks about that night in interviews. When she does, she deflects attention away from herself and back to the larger issue. "I didn't do anything special," she told Rolling Stone in a 2021 interview. "I had dinner with a veteran who deserved a nice meal." The fact that people think that's remarkable says more about our society than it does about me. We've normalized looking away from suffering. We've normalized treating people as disposable, and we wonder why our veterans end up on the streets. The wealthy couple never fully recovered their reputation. They became internet shorthand for entitled cruelty, the kind of cautionary tale parents use to teach their children about empathy and kindness. They disappeared from Los Angeles high society, and last anyone heard, they'd moved to a different city, to escape the judgment that followed them everywhere they went. But karma wasn't really the point of this story. The point was James. The point was what happened when someone with power used it to amplify someone without it. The point was that dignity isn't about money or status or designer clothes. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person you meet. Marcus, the restaurant manager, later said that the moment when Madonna stood up to that couple was the most powerful thing he'd ever witnessed in his career. "I've served presidents and royalty," he said, "but I've never seen anyone command a room the way Madonna did that night. Not with fame, not with money, but with pure moral authority. She reminded everyone in that restaurant, including me, what really matters." Today, if you go to the Veterans Center where James works, you'll see a plaque in the lobby. It reads, "Everyone who walks through this door belongs here. No exceptions, no excuses." It's a gift from Madonna, a reminder of the night when one man's belonging became non-negotiable. James Wilson is 69 years old now. He has an apartment, a job, a relationship with his daughter and 2 grandchildren he didn't know existed. He pays taxes, he votes, he helps other veterans find their way back from the darkness he knows so well. And every October, he and Madonna have dinner together. Sometimes at Spago, in that same private dining room, sometimes at other places. The location doesn't matter. What matters is the tradition, the reminder that one moment of compassion can ripple outward in ways you can never predict. The last time they had dinner, James asked Madonna a question he'd been wanting to ask for years. "Why me? Out of all the people on the streets that day, why did you stop for me?" "Because you had a Purple Heart pinned to your jacket," she said. "And I thought about all the people who must have walked past you that day, saw that medal, and kept walking. And I couldn't be one of those people. I just couldn't." That's the real story. Not about a celebrity doing charity work for good PR. Not about a viral moment or an internet justice story. But about a woman who saw someone the world had decided was invisible and decided that was unacceptable. If this story moved you, think about the James Wilsons in your own community, the veterans on street corners, the homeless people you walk past every day, and ask yourself, when was the last time you really saw them? When was the last time you treated someone like they belonged, even when the world told you they didn't? Subscribe for more stories about the moments when people chose compassion over convenience. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that everyone deserves dignity. Everyone belongs somewhere. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to prove it.